Hi, Lyssa here. And today I want to kind of talk about something that I think has really been coming up big for me in my own coaching. And this is really this idea around partnership and how we neutralize the power differential that is sometimes implicit in the work that we do with people, whether we're a therapist or a coach. And from the International Coaching Federation, they talk a lot about, in their code of ethics, about this idea that the client is whole, capable, resourceful, and creative. And yet the language that we use sometimes creates a hierarchy where maybe the client is coming to us in order to have answers given to them or be fixed if it is in therapy, like, fix me, can you fix me? And I say this from the position of having been a therapist for 20 years and a coach since even before that. And so I really have been playing with this idea in my own mind. So let's get into this idea of client, coachee, or thinker and see what you think at the end of this. So I was having a conversation on my podcast, and you can follow a link below to the podcast with Clare, Pedrick on the Coaching Studio podcast. And she was using the language of thinker instead of client. And it really sparked something in me. Now, little back history on me. My mom was a Jungian therapist. She had a PhD in psychology. And so I grew up with ideas around just different ways of being with people and how, we think about the people that we're working with. And something sparked in me, though, in this particular conversation that hadn't sparked before. So it had me do a little bit of a deep dive into where this idea of thinker instead of client came from. And what I discovered was it really was coming out of the work of Nancy Kline. And there's a link below to her book, A Time to Think. But this book came out in 1999. Nancy Kline had been working on this conceptual idea since the 80s. So it wasn't like it was finally culminating into a book in 1999, but she'd been really doing the work in the 80s and early 90s. And I feel 100% sure I had some conversation about this at one point with my mom, which I've literally maybe I'm just making it up because that's what we do, right? Like, I'm pretty sure I must have a memory about this, but it does feel like I do have a memory about this. At the time, it just bounced off me, though, and I didn't really lock into it. And something shifted in this conversation with Clare where I was like, wait a minute, thinker, that is fascinating. So I started thinking about this idea of how we name and we label the people that we're working with and how that might impact the way that we show up with the people that we're working with. So from a framework of transactional analysis, and for those of you who are not familiar with transactional analysis, it's the idea that we play roles and that there are sort of transactions that happen in conversations. And so the roles tend to be parent. So we've got two parents talking to each other. That can be problematic, or adult. So a parent talking to an adult. Adults don't really like people talking to them like they're their parent. You may have adult to adult, and then you have child, and children love talking to each other, but they all are sort of subservient to parents and adults. And we can have some different reactions. So for instance, if I'm having a conversation with you and I start telling you what to do, like I'm your mom, what that will sometimes do is throw people down into this child role. And we have several different ways that we respond, right? The parent can be a critical parent, or the parent might be a really supportive parent. It could be either or more. It could just be a interested parent. It could be any number of things. But what it will do is it will trigger a child role often. And so from that child role, you might get the acquiescent child. This is when you're working with somebody, whether you're a therapist or a coach, and you say, I think it'd be really good for you to maybe try stretching yourself into maybe going out of your house and into public in small little micro doses. And the person says yes. They don't say yes because they've thought of it, and they don't necessarily say yes because they want to do it. They may do it, but they may be coming from this acquiescent child role. Or they could be rebellious. I'm a redheaded Irish Leo. I was sort of a rebellious child. So when an adult told me to do something, I always questioned it. So this rebellious child might be like, no, and you can't make me, right? And so this transactional analysis framework is really parent, adult, child. And as adults, we tend to want to come as adult to adult. My thinking on coaching and on therapy has in the last 10 years really evolved to where instead of me coming in as the expert, so I'm going to change the language, expert, peer, or novice. So if I'm coming in as the expert, even if I don't think of myself that way, but you see me as the expert in the conversation, you may be in the novice role. And this role means that I get to tell you all kinds of things that I think are important for you to do or think or play with that you may choose to do or not do. You may be a rebellious or an acquiescent novice. I don't know. It'll depend on you. But this role of expertise, it automatically sort of relegates the other person into a different role. Very few expert to experts have these kind of conversations, because if I see myself as an expert, why am I coming to you, expert, to have you tell me what to do? That's not how it works. So adult to adult or peer to peer is where we are engaging with a human being as though they are our equal. As though they are our equal, they are our equal. They may know, they're going to know different things than we know. We're going to know different things than they know, but we're coming together as two equal participants in a conversation. And I have really thought it would be really interesting in coaching. And when I talk about psychological safety, when I talk about building a foundation of trust and safety, I really talk about the coach or the therapist coming in as the novice to the client's expertise. And how does that change the conversation? If I truly believe your whole capable, resourceful, and creative, then I'm going to come in with this idea that you're whole, capable, resourceful, and creative. And so fast forward now to this conversation about thinker and thought partner. In coaching, we talk about ourselves as in a thought partnership. We talk about coaches as being thought partners. And I really believe, whether or not the ICF did this on purpose or it just was in the ethos and it came out, but I really think this is built on Nancy Klein's work. And I really think that what happened was the languaging got a little bit shifted, where we started talking about the people that we're working with as clients. The transition from client really came out of therapy, where you started off with patients, because at a certain point at the turn of the century, therapy was trying to make sure that it was real and not just a bunch of magic hoo-ha. And so therapists really aligned, therapy aligned with a medical model. At that point, a medical model has patients. And so there was then a shift with humanism and really starting to look at a more egalitarian way of being with the people that we're working with, that moved from patient to client. Now, the word client for me is not that problematic. It's a fine word, but it does set up a bit of a hierarchy, because hairstylists have clients, lawyers have clients, accountants have clients, therapists have clients, coaches have clients. Pretty much insert anything in here, and it is a transactional sort of space. I'm the accountant, and you're the client. You're coming to me for my expertise. So that's still there with this idea of the expertise to the person who is a novice or needs help or needs support. Nothing wrong with this kind of relationship. I have an accountant because I don't like doing taxes mostly. And so I go to them because they are the expert in this realm and I don't want to have to learn it. So there's nothing wrong with these kinds of relationships, but in a coaching or therapeutic relationship, that is not as useful as it could be in another kind of relationship. So if I'm a consultant, that's one thing. But if I'm really coaching somebody, if I really truly believe that they're whole, capable, resourceful, and creative, I've really liked how the work of Nancy Kline has sort of flipped this around in my mind. What if we take away all the transactional analysis? What if we step out of all the roles and step into a new role, which is I am the thought partner and you are the thinker. And it starts to define our roles very differently. You are doing the heavy lifting of thinking, and my role as the thought partner is to support your agency and autonomy in how you're sussing through and sorting through the situations and issues and dreams and hopes and goals that you have in your life from this position of support and curiosity, but that it's your work to do, and that my job as the thought partner is to hold the space, but it is your job as the thinker to do the work. And I don't know why, but that just sort of blew my mind. I wrote an article about this on my blog, but I also cross-posted it to LinkedIn. You can find it there if you're interested. I'm sure there's a link below. But this idea of how do we start to shift this way of thinking. I also talk about this word coachee, which is something that has come out of coaching, and I don't hear it anywhere else. I have some intrinsic problems with the word coachee. It sounds very, we tend to add E to the end of words as a nickname. It's a sense of familiarity. A Robert becomes a Bobby. It is friendlier. It is more familiar. Many children get called nicknames, Mike or Mikey instead of Michael or Mike. They get these nicknames because we love them, because they're fun, because it is about familiarity and rapport, which is fine. But when we're talking about a professional relationship, I think that there's an intrinsic problem in familiarizing ourselves to that degree with the people that we're working with. And I think there's a bit for me, and I would love to hear your thoughts because I'm sure they're all over the place because a lot of people use the language of coachee. But I think that it is a bit too, I think it puts a person into more of the child or novice role. And so for me, it doesn't work at all. Now, I want to also unpack this idea of thinker a little bit. I've had some people say to me, well, thinking is more than just thinking. Like people are more than just their heads. Like we're not just walking, talking heads. That's not what we are. We are doing all kinds of things when we're thinking. And so when you look at the work of Nancy Kline, I'm going to go back to her. She's not talking about just head thinking. She's really thinking in a much more holistic systems sort of way within the entire framework of your physical and mental and emotional and energetic experience. So when I'm using the word thinker in all of my work, especially around the language of how we use metaphors, I'm really listening for things that are somatic experiences. And so I'm not just wanting people to think with their heads. If it's true that we have, and it is true that we have neuronal cells in our gut and in our heart, and we probably, as we go further into understanding the way that the body is a brain completely, because we're sending signals from texture to a brain. This is the aggregator of information, but that's aggregating information that comes from everywhere. If I pick up this warm cup of coffee, the warmth from the coffee is being aggregated in my brain, but it's happening out here where I'm touching it. And so we are thinking of I am thinking of thinking as a holistic way of processing information. And so for me, the word thinker really works. And I haven't found another word that really embodies, all of our sensory perceptions and physical experiences and history, because all of these things come into intuition and things of that nature. So I really like the simplicity of thinker, knowing that it embodies a lot more than just our head. And for me, it really shifts in a really specific way our relationship. I am no longer above you, but rather the support mechanism for you to do the work of experiencing, determining, learning, and thinking, and using your whole self as the instrument of how you explore your relationship to the situations around you. So for instance, anger. And I used to teach anger management in the military. I did that for about 7 years. And it was often part of the anger management conversation that I would have with people is like, anger is just an emotion. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just telling you something. What is this particular anger telling you? It could be telling you that you feel like you're being disrespected. It could be telling you that you feel like you're being walked all over. It could tell you that this isn't the kind of relationship you enjoy being in. It could tell you that you are needing to protect yourself in some way because you're being asked to do something that doesn't align with who you are as a human being. And it can also show up in different emotions. Some people have anger, other people go to fear. It's all there. But these emotions are being manufactured inside of us based on our experiences and a whole bunch of different filters that these experiences run through. And they have something to tell us. So how do we start to get curious with what is showing up? And that is the work often of coaching and also of therapy. So therapy really is more distinctly useful when there is a serious situation that has created a disturbance that is so great that you need more support than you would get from maybe a coach working on something like leadership or procrastination or any of the number, how you make decisions, any of the number of things that often come into coaching conversations. On the other hand, coaching does something similar, which is, if we think about it from the iceberg model, and what's above the waterline are actions and results, actions and results, actions and results, we still have to go below the waterline to discover what is driving those actions. Because if we don't like what the results are that the actions are getting, we have to explore what's driving those actions. And in this way, again, the thought partnership is so useful because it's the work of the person who's experiencing the struggle to do the work of discovering what's below the iceberg. It's the role of the coach or the therapist to hold the space so that you can do that deeper work in a safe way. For me, the safe way to do it is often through the lens of metaphors and somatic metaphors, as well as visual metaphors, and really using the person's language, because the language is emerging out of the experience as they make meaning of it and share it with us. But that's really more about my Power of Metaphor program. Again, there's probably a link below. You can go ahead and follow it. But I really would love to hear what you think. And I would also really enjoy a conversation about your own way of conceptualizing the people that you work with. For me, thinker is where I'm at right now. That may change down the road. There may be a different word that shows up that I like better. So far, I haven't found it. I even asked ChatGPT and it couldn't help me. It came up with some like mashups that just I don't think would flow very easily and certainly are not, in my mind, catchy or rememberable. And that's really hugely important, is that we can remember the words that we're using. So thinker it is for me. And I would love to hear your thoughts. thoughts. Also, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do that. It would really be of use to me and helpful. And I love hearing your comments, and I try and respond as quickly as I can. So thank you for being here. I hope this was useful, and I look forward to seeing you on another video soon. Cheers.